Hey everybody, it's Andy Cloudy Mulder, and this is a special edition of my UK Thrash Assault series where I'm going to focus on the band Warfare. Probably not a band if you know that you necessarily associate with thrash metal, but they do have a connection, and I think they're worth highlighting in this series as well. So they've got I've got four albums by Warfare, four and a half, five. There's a demos album as well. So I wanted to put them all together in a single video, show you what I've got, and just tell you what I like about this band. So Warfare were formed in around 1982 by Paul Evo Evans, and he at his heart is a real punk guy. He was in some pretty big punk bands early on, and that's where he cut his teeth in terms of touring. But he always had an idea in his mind about a band that he wanted to put together, and Warfare was that concept. Really, a real over the top amalgamation of the best parts of punk and the best parts of metal at that time. You could, I guess you could consider Warfare to be some like a proto thrash band, but I don't think they're a proto thrash band in the same way that Raven are considered to be one. So Raven influenced the likes of Metallica, and I think Metallica were kind of influence like Warfare a bit, but so did Motorhead, so did Venom, so did bands like Tank, and Warfare were really of its time, but they also went on to influence a lot of other UK thrash bands. I think a lot of other UK thrash bands, they heard bands like Metallica, thought wow, and then they saw Warfare doing something loud and fast and realised that they could probably do it themselves as well. And Evo in the Contact in Blood book that I reference constantly for this series, and just to build upon my own knowledge of UK thrash metal. He seems to be a name that pops up regularly, certainly around the bands that came from the northeast, of somebody who encouraged, helped, gave advice, and whatever. So Evo is a bit of a unique beast in metal in that he's a drummer but also a vocalist, and his singing style is very, very punky. He snarls and he just produces the most awesome angry metal vocals, but I say with a very, very punky attitude. So Warfare are metal, but they're also a bit punk. They have punk sensibilities to them in terms of the lyrics aren't, they're not they're not fantasy at all. They are covering social issues and shit that was happening on in the 80s. But you'll also find some poetry in the albums as well, I promise you, and also some sort of weird progression as they went in their careers. There'll be saxophone in here, there'll be violins, there'll be keyboards as well. Often things you don't associate, certainly with UK thrash, or maybe thrash in general. Evo describes this as alternative metal or alternative to metal. So let's start off with the first album from 1984, Pure Filth. This is an original copy that I have on Neat Records, and this is in no way, shape, or form a thrash album. It's a snarly blend of punk and metal. If you can see that and you can pause, you could read what I imagine these are Evo's words at the top. It's all about setting the scene for what Warfare are and what their position in the metal scene is all about. That's the lineup. Evo on drums and lead vocals, Gunner on guitar, Falcon on bass. Now this album is produced by Algie Ward of Tank, and Evo, say, he cut his teeth hanging around with people like Lemmy and Girl School and Tank as well. Algie Ward, of course, being from Tank. Songs on here that are great: Total Armageddon, Noise, Filth and Fury, Breakout, rabid metal. And the last song on the album, "Rose Petals Fall from Her Face," is you have to hear it to believe it. Really, oops, excuse me. Yeah, you have to really hear it to believe it. It is Warfare and Venom together. So on drums you have Evo and Abaddon, on guitar Gunnar and Mantis, on bass Falcon and Kronos, and on vocals Evo and Kronos as well. And the end where it just gets into a crescendo, and there's all sorts of uh, expletives and things going on. You really have to hear it to believe it. But it is that's very much a punky song, but it is played with a lot of heart and a lot of metal in mind. Let's have a look on the inside. Obviously it's 80s, so it's all black vinyl, but I have to show the you can't really see it there. Very bright because it's in white. The neat classic neat records label from the early 90s, the thumbs up. The album also came with a free 7-inch single. Probably wasn't so free to me these days because this is I got this more recently, but it was a two-track, very bright, two-track single, label on one side, blank on the other, and on here we've got This Machine Kills and Burn the King's Road, which I think were both on an EP with Noise, Filth and Fury. I think should be on that one. So after Pure Filth, we got Metal Anarchy in 1985. This is a 2018 a Back on Black reissue. Love the Back on Black reissues, especially a few years after they come out, because you can usually get them pretty cheap. Look at that album cover. Nothing says more Metal Anarchy than somebody grabbing I was going to say a harp, but it almost looks like a brain. Anyway, great reproduction by Back in Black as always. I doubt this was a gatefold. This was probably the inner. I mentioned it many times when I'm talking about Back on Black that they tend to release a lot of things as gatefold rather than the original inner sleeve. But here we have lyrics and artwork. It is on clear vinyl, my least favourite vinyl of all. Impossible to see any sort of scratches or imperfections on, and also just looks super cheap. But that doesn't take away from the music that's on here. This is definitely speedier than Pure Filth. It's much better produced as well. In fact, this was produced by Lemmy Kilmister himself. It's still more on the punk metal side of the fence, though. We're not really in the thrash metal territory here at all. The intro, as mentioned here, is a bit of a surprise when you first hear it, because it starts off with the Sound of Music, and then when you get like the first couple of lines of the Sound of Music being sung, it just descends into electric mayhem and a full-on punk metal onslaught. It is brilliant the way it's done. Death Vigilance, great song. Psycho Express, brilliant song. Wreck Society and Metal Anarchy are my favourites here. And again, we've got Evo on drums. It says Gunnar and Wurzel, so Wurzel from Motorhead. He plays on, I think it's on Metal Anarchy. He puts a guest appearance in as well. Nice little write-up on the top here. A 2018 write-up from Evo on the evolution of this album. But yeah, this is, if you want to check out Warfare and get in at the earliest stage and you're not too sure about the punk metal side, then Metal Anarchy is a good place to start. But they got even better. They got more thrashy in 1986. Again, a 2018 Back on Black reissue. This time it's not a gatefold, which is surprising. And this is mayhem, fucking mayhem. Thrashier, the punky vocals are less prominent, but there's still a snarl that they are delivered with. This time it's actually produced by Kronos of Venom. Generator, extremely financed. They're killer tracks from side one, but side B here is the star of the show. Everything on here: Projectile Vomit, the title track, Mayhem Fucking Mayhem, Atomic Slut, Machine Gun Breath, Murder on Melrose. It's an awesome side of full-on speedy metal with a few thrashy tendencies. We are getting more into the thrashy mold. And this apparently is a self-portrait of Evo that he did as well. Brilliant album. Again, this version has a nice little write-up here at the bottom from Evo in 2018 about where we were going with this and where the band were going as well. But MFM, 1986, Warfare's third album. Brings us on to the last album I have from them. They did have one album after this, but the band started to change significantly, and it's not an album that I'm particularly connected with, so don't have a copy. But this is definitely in the thrash metal mold. This is a Conflict of Hatred from 1986. 86, I thought it was a bit later than that. I think this may be 87 actually. Should have done my homework. Never mind. Anyway, the experimental sides on here there's some saxophone in here, which do not like sax on metal records at all, but I've listened to this a few times in the last few weeks and my head is turning in the context of this album. And there are violins and keyboards on here as well throughout. A Conflict of Hatred, apparently this is I think it's Beethoven and Van Gogh, one being the conflict, one being the hatred. It's on Neat Records original release. We've got the lyrics on the back. The songs are all in a different order than on the record, which is one of my absolute pet peeves. Waxworks, that has sort of like a poetry start to it, and then the sax on here, it's kind of like the, if you're watching an 80s detective program, maybe even something like Magnum, and all of a sudden the camera's panning through someone's living room and there's like sax music playing as sort of incidental music. It kind of gives me that feel to it, but it's also kind of full on thrash metal as well. I can't get my head around it, and I can't not like it. It's weird. But other songs that are great on here are Hate to Create, Dancing in the Flames of Insanity is a great track. But there's sax and there's violin on here as well. It does take you by surprise, and it does work. It just, you've kind of, it's better when you've heard the song again and you know it's coming, so you're not taken by surprise. I don't know if it's ingenious or whether it's madness, but the jury's out on that one. Also on here, great tracks to check out are Fatal Vision, Rejoice, The Feast of Quarantine, and the final track on here is Noise, Filth and Fury Requiem. And it's not a musical track at all. Again, it's Evo reading out. The lyrics are on here. I'm not going to read them out. It's you'll see it online. But it's almost like a poem, a biography of Warfare, about what Warfare were about, read by Evo with some just sort of ambient music over the top. It's just bizarre to have such a thing on a metal album, but it ends with a line: alternative metal for metal alternatives. We will meet again, keep the faith and keep on writing. And then it kind of ends with like a Vera Lynn we'll meet again being sung over the top. It's a strange album, but it's got something about it. It it's on Neat, but it doesn't have the Neat thumb ups by now. But yeah, Conflict of Hatred. It's a strange album. It really, really is, but it's really, really growing on me. Um, Mantis also plays on that one as well, and they had a change of bass player to a guy called Zlaughter, I think. Yeah, Zlaughter. Yeah, additional musicians: Mantis on guest guitar, and then saxophone, and the keyboards and violins listed as well. The final album I have, so they did an album after that called, I think it was called Hammer Horrors, came out in around 1990, but Eva had this idea about what he was going to do with it, and it was around the time that Hammer Horror were doing a particular anniversary, whether it was 30 or 40 years or so. But I've heard a couple of tracks on it, and it's a little bit out there. He was allegedly a bit disappointed that a lot of the fans turned off from there, and I can see why they did. But it was his band. He wanted to take it where he wanted to go. A couple of the tracks from that do appear on this. This is a High Roller Records 2015 Noise Noise Noise, the Lost Demos. It's got the High Roller treatment, so it's superbly done. But the tracks, I think, Phantom of the Opera and Prince of Darkness, the demos are on here. They came from that fifth album, and they are the ones that kind of stick out here like a sore thumb. There are some great demos on here, all the way from 1984 all the way up to 1989. There's even a cover of Two Tribes, the Frankie Goes to Hollywood song, which apparently Holly Johnson absolutely hated, which was exactly the response that Eva was looking for when he recorded it. This comes on a red semi-transparent vinyl. As I say, it's got the full high roller treatment, so even though the demos, they sound pretty good, and a nice glossy write-up by Eva at the top, and a little description of what each of the songs were about as well, and some nice sort of pictures and articles and press clippings and things to go with it. The typical high roller stuff. So there we go. That's my Warfare collection, a metal alternative for metal alternatives. Thanks for watching, and next time on UK Thrash Attack we'll go back and we'll show some individual bands again. But I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments what you know about Warfare, what your favourite albums are, and I will speak to you again soon. Thanks for watching.